You know that feeling, right? When you finish your taxes and you see that refund number, it's like this mini celebration. But then imagine this. That refund, poof, gone, snatched away before you even see a dime.
Right.
That's what we're diving into today. This whole thing called tax refund offsets.
Yeah, you're filing, you're excited, you're making plans, and then bam, it can be a real shock.
So let's break this down. Who are the usual suspects? Who's out there trying to dip into my tax refund?
Okay, so think of it this way. Any agency you might owe money to, they can actually flag the Treasury Department.
Really?
Yeah, to take a portion of your refund.
Wow. Okay.
It could be child support, state taxes.
Oh, state taxes, yeah.
Even student loans.
Oh, student loans. Okay, so it's not just like, owing money to the feds themselves. It could be any agency that they have some sort of agreement with.
Exactly. And the list it's pretty extensive.
Okay.
State income tax agencies, that's a big one.
Makes sense.
Especially, if you move states.
Right.
And you haven't, settled up with your old state, they could come knocking.
Oh, interesting.
Then there's, of course, the Department of Education.
Yeah.
If you've defaulted on student loans, that's a big one.
So it's serious stuff. What about, okay, this is probably a silly question, but what about, a pile of unpaid parking tickets?
Probably wouldn't make the cut. We're talking about more significant debts to federal agencies.
Okay, so it's got to be, the real deal.
Yeah. Things like unpaid small business administration loans.
Oh, right.
Including those issued through the Paycheck Protection Program.
Oh, wow. So even from, the pandemic relief program.
Yeah. Or economic injury, disaster loans, things like that.
So if you're a small business owner and you hit a rough patch, that refund might not be as safe as you hope.
Exactly.
Wow. Okay, so this is already, my mind is a little blown.
Another one that might surprise people, unemployment compensation debts.
Right.
Yeah, if there was an overpayment or even fraud involved, the state unemployment agency could ask the feds to collect from your refund.
Wow. It's amazing how many different ways this can actually happen. I'm starting to realize this is more common than people realize.
Yeah.
So what could you tell us about how to avoid getting caught in this refund offset web? Is it as simple as breaking even on your taxes each year?
Well, yeah, aiming for as close to zero as possible is definitely one strategy.
Right.
But, it's not always easy to hit that perfect balance.
Yeah.
You want to avoid underpaying and facing penalties, but then a large refund, that could be vulnerable.
Right, because then it's just sitting there.
Exactly.
Ripe for the picking.
But the good news is that there are other proactive steps you can take.
Okay, now that's what I like to hear.
Even before you file your taxes.
Okay, tell me more about this. How can I get ahead of this? Okay, so let's say, hypothetically speaking, I might have a debt or two. What's the first sign that the feds are, getting ready to take a chunk of my refund?
Well, you're not going to be completely left in the dark.
Okay, good to know.
The agency that's, coming after your refund, they have to send you a 60-day notice.
Okay, so it's not like a total surprise attack. I get a little heads up. What does this notice actually look like, though? What kind of information is in it?
It's actually pretty straightforward. It outlines the debt, the amount you owe, and this is key, your options for dealing with it.
Okay, so it's not just like a you're doomed, hand over the refund kind of letter. It's more like, hey, here's the situation, let's figure this out.
Yeah, exactly. You have a chance to, actually take some action.
Okay, that's good to know. What are my options? What can I actually do once I get this notice?
Well, the most straightforward is pay off the debt.
Right, of course.
If you can swing that.
But let's be real, not always an option.
Exactly, but usually you can set up a payment plan.
Okay, that's good. A little bit easier to manage.
Right.
What if I get this notice and I'm looking at it and I'm like, this isn't mine, this is a mistake?
Well, that's where the dispute option comes in.
Okay, so there is a way to fight back.
Oh, absolutely. If you believe it's an error, you absolutely should dispute it.
How do you even go about doing that?
Well, you're going to want to gather any evidence you have. Payment confirmations, anything that shows you don't owe what they're claiming.
Right, like receipts, anything like that.
And you submit that to the agency.
Okay, so it really is don't panic when you get that notice.
Right.
But don't just shove it in a drawer and ignore it either.
Definitely not. That's 60 days. That's your window.
Yeah, to take action.
It's your chance to either, fix it or prepare a defense.
Right. Be ready. Now, you mentioned earlier about being proactive, and something you said that kind of stuck with me was this idea of negotiating with creditors before you even file your taxes.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Can you tell me a little bit more about that? Because I feel like that could head off this whole offset situation?
It can. It can. Let's say, you owe back taxes.
Right.
Or maybe you're behind on those student loan payments, reaching out to those agencies before you even file to discuss, like, a payment plan or explore hardship options.
So it's really about getting ahead of it, not waiting for that notice to show up in the mail.
Exactly. And those agencies, honestly, they're often more willing to work with you
Okay.
if you're making an effort.
Right. Showing you're trying.
It shows responsibility, and it could potentially save you that refund surprise later on.
This is all such great advice.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you walking us through this.
Yeah.
It's making me feel a lot more empowered, honestly, about what could be a very scary situation. Now, we've talked about owing money to other agencies, but what about the IRS themselves? Like, what if I owe money directly to them? That feels like a whole other ball game.
Yeah, it does feel like, I don't know, a little more serious when it's the IRS. It definitely has a different weight to it.
It does. So if you owe them money, can they just take your refund directly? Like without going through that whole TOP thing?
It is a little different with the IRS. They kind of have their own system for collecting,
Of course they do.
and they don't necessarily have to wait for the Treasury offset program.
Okay, so that is a little intimidating. Is there anything you can do if you're in that position? Like if you know you owe the IRS?
Well, it's not all doom and gloom.
Okay, good.
While the IRS can and often does use refunds to settle tax debts, there are situations where they might be a little lenient.
Okay, so there's a chance they might cut you a break. When would that happen? Like, how do you even prove that to the IRS?
So basically, you need to demonstrate that losing your refund would create a serious financial hardship.
Okay, so like, you're really depending on that money to get by.
Exactly.
So what qualifies as a hardship?
We're talking about being able to afford basic living expenses.
Okay, so rent, food, utilities, that sort of thing.
Exactly. And documentation is key here. Gather those bills, pay stubs, anything that really shows your financial situation and the impact of losing that refund.
So you have to make your case, prove that you really need it.
Right. You have to be prepared to explain why you need that money to avoid, real hardship.
Okay. Is there like a name for this? If you're trying to like make this case to the IRS?
Yeah, it's called an offset bypass refund, and honestly, a lot of people don't even know about it.
Really? It's like a secret weapon.
Kind of, yeah.
So it sounds like, knowledge really is power in these offset situations, whether it's the IRS or another agency.
Absolutely. The more you understand your rights and the different options available, the better.
Definitely. Because it can feel very overwhelming otherwise.
It can, but remember how we talked about being proactive? That helps here too. If you know you owe taxes, try to get ahead of it. Exploring a payment plan with the IRS early on. That can prevent a lot of stress later.
Right, like rip the Band-Aid off.
Yeah.
Deal with it.
Exactly.
This has been, honestly, so eye-opening. Thank you so much for walking us through all of this.
You got it. Happy to help.
Is there anything else, any final thoughts, words of wisdom you want to leave our listeners with?
If it all feels too complicated or you're not sure what to do, don't be afraid to ask for help.
Oh, that's such good advice.
Whether it's a tax professional, a credit counselor, even a trusted friend or family member, having someone in your corner can make all the difference.
I love that. It's a good reminder that you don't have to navigate this stuff alone.
Exactly.
Well, there you have it. A crash course in tax refund offsets. We've covered the who, the why, the how, and most importantly, what you can do to protect yourself. Remember, knowledge is power, and you are now armed and dangerous. Until next time, happy diving.